True Northern Hustle is built for Canadians who are passionate about business, entrepreneurship, and community. If you have a few minutes, we'd love to hear from you. Take our short listener survey using the link in the show notes.
How do you create a drink that reflects the way people want to socialize today? Intentional and elevated. Welcome to True Northern Hustle, the podcast from Interact that offers an honest look at the grit, creativity, and resilience behind the Canadian small businesses we know and love. My name is Isabel Lee, and I'll be your host. Today's episode highlights a journey that's both personal and incredibly timely, especially as more people look for mindful ways to socialize and enjoy great flavors without compromise. We're chatting with Andrea Grand, the co-founder of Barbet, a modern Canadian beverage company she launched with her sister after a life-changing moment made them rethink what inclusive, elevated drinking experiences could be. What started as a search to help her sister feel comfortable and confident at social events turned into a brand that's redefining the non-alcoholic space with full-flavored, beautifully designed sparkling drinks. There's so much heart and honesty in her story. Let's dive in. Thank you, Andrea, for joining me today. Let's start with the big picture. For those who may not know, what is Barbet and what inspired you and your sister to start it?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So Barbet is a Canadian-founded company. We make full-flavored sparkling beverages for modern humans. And as you mentioned, I started this with my sister, and she was really the catalyst to creating Barbet in that she has epilepsy. And so she had a particularly bad seizure in March of 2020. And through that experience, she cut out a bunch of things from her diet. And one of the things she did end up cutting out for a period of time was alcohol. She continued to find herself in a position where she didn't feel included in the social event. So kind of an outsider looking in. She was holding a pop or a soda that was juvenile in flavor and in branding. And she always got the "why aren't you drinking?" question. So we started just to look for options for her, something to make her feel comfortable, not only in those event or kind of social moments, but also in a solo moment and kind of trying to elevate it. And then on the non-alc side, it was not great branded kind of de-alkalized wines or sugary de-alkalized kind of cocktail replacements. So we wanted something that was full in flavor, played on its senses. So you got strong aromatics coming off of all of our flavor profiles. You have all of our flavors pour out into a color. And then we have 3 ingredients, so pairing common and uncommon ingredients to create this new melody of flavor that people haven't experienced before. And then, as I mentioned, that's all kind of wrapped up in this like very elevated designed can with the intention that it can sit on your bar cart, it can sit at your dinner party, it can elevate that solo moment and really merge that gap and create something that's super versatile.
What is your background? How did you know how to get into this? Like how would you even know where to start?
This is my first entrepreneurial journey. This is my first experience in beverage. Prior to starting Barbet, I was working in cannabis here in Toronto, pre-legalization through legalization. But prior to that, I was working in loyalty marketing. So I had this great blend of exposure to a variety of different components under marketing through that loyalty marketing role. So experiential, data, email marketing, brand execution, and brand and rebrand exercises. And then on the cannabis side, I got experience to what it takes to bring a physical product to market. None of which would I have sat back and been like, oh, that's going to lead to the creation of a beverage brand. But that is where kind of all of my experience was drawn from. And again, Katie and I didn't sit down and create or find a white space in the market that we wanted to identify and seek and create a product to solve. We really came from Katie's experience and the problem that she was experiencing, and then really just tried to solve that.
What an authentic way to come about a product that fits a growing market, as we've seen with the new generations. I know Gen Z especially have become more and more non-drinkers or non-alcoholic drinkers. So it's incredible. I love the story. You've described Barbet as not just a drink, but a perspective. What do you mean by that? And how does it shape the way you think about the brand?
Barbet for us has always been about creating a strong point of view. I think some of the best brands out there create and foster and live within a brand world that they've developed. You know, the brands that have the strongest world, you know a piece of creative as soon as you see it to be that brand. And so we just wanted to continue that throughout and build Barbet with that kind of same ethos in mind. We've never been a product first brand or company. We really are people and community first. And so in doing that, like, we obviously wanted to define what sits in that brand world for us. And I think that perspective really comes down to kind of elevating the everyday moment. So treating all of the moments like they matter. And that really has shaped how we look at partnerships and marketing and design as storytelling. It really all comes back to having a really strong perspective when it comes to brand building.
So you mentioned that you don't have an entrepreneurial background. How did you know where to start?
I think for us, the question was, how do we launch a product? How do we create a product? Eventually, that question then transitioned to how do we run and start a business? But from the product standpoint, we simply broke it down into super digestible steps. It's very overwhelming to think about how do you get a can on the shelf of a leading national retailer or grocer in Canada. Very manageable to say, how do I get someone to design the label that goes on the can? So we started breaking everything down in digestible steps. How does the label go on the can? Where do I get the can? How does the lid go on the can? How do I make that formula? Then how does it go into a package, and kind of so on as we move down. And that really just kept our heads kind of on our shoulders in terms of not feeling overwhelmed. We had tons of great mentors. We reached out, we cold LinkedIn messaged a ton of people. And as I mentioned earlier, the amount of people who were so willing to provide their advice, their expertise. I think that people are really willing to give advice and perspective and point out the sharp objects that might be coming your way and really help kind of like foster that next generation of entrepreneurs.
So you find that's a general sentiment with small business owners in Canada, that they're very generous with their time and their advice?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, in my experience particularly, that has been the case. And I would say even in my previous careers, that was the case as well. I think asking for help and being honest when you don't know something and coming about it from like a very honest way is, and genuine way, I should say. There are a lot of people who are very willing to help. Again, you kind of just got to shoot your shot.
As a small business owner, I'm sure sometimes it feels like there's a ton of pressure to get every detail perfect. What advice would you give other entrepreneurs about knowing when a product is ready? And when do you know it's time to just put it out into the world?
Yeah, perfect is such an interesting word because I'm definitely, and I think most founders are, in a category of type A. And so the strive for perfection is always there. But the reality and a lesson I learned very quickly early on is that there's no real perfection. There's only really staying true to your intention or staying true to your values and your beliefs. Tweaking at some point doesn't add value, but feedback does. And so being a community-centric brand, it was really important for us to obviously get our formulations, get our brand to a place that we were happy with, but then put it out into the world. So even back in COVID days, like obviously working within the limitations that we were allowed, but we held tastings fairly regularly to like hone in and perfect what those flavor profiles were. We held focus groups on what our packaging looked like, understanding how our flavor names resonated with people, how our ingredients were resonating with people. Did people understand what we were trying to do? So tweaking doesn't add value all the time. And again, sometimes you just have to put it out to the world. And even to this day, even the big brands in CPG are continuing to iterate, are continuing to make tweaks. And you kind of just have to trust your gut as to when you get to a point that you feel as though the product is ready for feedback. And then I think it's important to remember, as I've said, feedback continues through your entire journey.
I know you'd mentioned in the beginning that you and your sister didn't do a white space exercise to try and identify what was missing. But in order for a product to be successful in the market, it needs to fill a need that is not being filled already. So from your perspective, how should other entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs think about approaching developing a new product? Like, what should they be thinking about?
There's so many paths to becoming a founder, to entrepreneurship, to having a small business. I think one of the most important places to start is starting with a tension or a problem point. So what is missing? What is frustrating? What is underserved? It could be something that you experience in your day-to-day life. It could be something that you research and you discover a subset of the population is experiencing. But you really want to build for a real moment or a behavior, not a hypothetical one. Real important distinction there in terms of how that product or that service will end up being received in the market. I think authenticity is obviously such a buzzword right now. We're all throwing it around alongside community, but the product has to be authentic to solving that problem and do it with the values that it's set out. The next generation is drinking less, which is absolutely true, but they're also looking for more from their products and from the brands that they choose to put on their body or put in their body. And by that, I mean, they have lived in an Instagram video culture. They've grown up around it. They're the first generation, obviously, to see social media all the way through. And so with that, there's such a visual nature to how they perceive the world. And so products not only have to satiate some sort of need in terms of, for Barbet, thirst, but they also have to deliver on more than that. So for us, it's about delivering a sophisticated, elevated drink that you feel comfortable drinking. And for us, it's about transitioning that why aren't you drinking question to what are you drinking?
I like your point about this being the generation that grew up with social media from beginning to end, and how things are much more visual and how it's being captured on camera and how it's being reflected back. That's a great point. Okay, well, as we move on, you're now 1 year into working with a national distributor and saw big volume right out of the gate. What lessons can other founders take away from scaling quickly while staying true to their own vision?
I think obviously that is a headline. And I think the story behind it is that it took us 3 years to get there. I think that it's so easy to get caught up in the positive news shared across social media platforms and potentially feel like comparison culture. Feel like you have to stand up to that. So I just always make it very clear that we spent a good portion of those first 3 years pounding the pavement ourselves. We actually went to this distributor once before and they told us that we weren't ready yet. And so we went back out and we proved product market fit. We proved like the 4 Ps in terms of pricing and promotion and product. And we really continued to learn where and how Barbet should show up. So super exciting. As you mentioned, a year ago, we did sign with a national distributor. And as we've looked at scale, what was important for us were to set those guardrails around what our non-negotiables were. So for us, that's flavor, it's design, it's placement. And I think sometimes scaling or going mass sometimes comes across as being generic. And for us, obviously, we wanted to maintain that distinct niche craft approach that we've always had to brand and maintaining kind of that premium positioning that we've launched with. We grew up in bodegas and restaurants and cafes and these high visibility locations and use that as a leverage to build brand and to drive brand awareness. Again, high visibility, low volume, but those micro steps were really important for us to obviously get to that position of the national distributor. Just on that note, not every opportunity is the right one at the right time. I mean, we're so grateful that distributor said no to us originally, because I don't think that we would have been prepared from an operations standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, to hit that national scale. And it really kind of put us back on our heels in a great way, in that we had to challenge ourselves again and find creative and new ways to drive distribution and drive sales. And that is then when we came back and told that whole story, they brought us on when we were ready.
I love that you didn't give up. I love that you went back to them.
Someone once told me it's not a no, it's a not yet.
I love it. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I always say, like, if it hasn't worked out, it always works out in the end. If it hasn't worked out, it's not the end.
Yeah, and not every opportunity is for everyone, and it's not every opportunity is the right time. I think sometimes businesses and brands can be defined stronger by who they or what they say no to versus what they're saying yes to.
Absolutely. So cash flow is the lifeblood of any small business, and sometimes that side of entrepreneurship can feel like the least exciting part. A lot of small business owners talk about how much time they spend chasing invoices. What's helped you simplify that part of the business so you can make sure your finances are always running smoothly?
Yes, I think that cash flow, P&Ls, budgets, all of that continues to be a growing pain. I think especially for a lot of founders who might come in as visionaries and the idea behind the product or the service, but not necessarily have the functional knowledge from a financial literacy standpoint. So I'm very honest that this was a learning curve for me, and it's something that I challenge myself to get better at every single day, every single week. But for us, it was about kind of the financial clarity. That was a key part. That was defining kind of clear processes. It was bringing on systems, automating where possible. It was leaning on resources that had this skill set and were specialized in this to really learn. And then being transparent with partners. Like, we have hit some pretty big growth spurts at parts of our kind of journey here. And we've gone to partners in the past and just had to renegotiate payment terms. We also look for simplification in terms of our payments that we're getting. We work with a variety of different people, anywhere from your bodega down the street or your favorite neighborhood restaurant all the way up. So always able, and we're always massaging kind of how we work with each of them. But again, I think it's all about automating processes and then sticking to a monthly process when it comes to review. I think burying your head in the sand around this topic is obviously not helpful. CPG, you live and die in your margins. You start adding in things like trade spend and promotional spend, and the P&L can get pretty crazy and out of hand pretty quickly. Clarity, transparency, and then leaning on the resources that are more technically trained in these areas and have that kind of deeper understanding.
I'm so impressed that you pick this up without an entrepreneurship background. I think, some folks can spend years studying this type of thing, being in business. And so hats off to all of you for being able to kind of navigate this so successfully.
Yeah, and I think there's such a big, you have to put your ego aside in so many ways in this process. And this is definitely one of them.
Before Barbet, you worked in the hospitality and cannabis industries. What advice do you give entrepreneurs when carrying skills from one industry to another?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything in your background and your, whether it's personal or professional experience, are the building blocks to who you are. So for example, hospitality, how does serving have to do with what we do at Barbet? But hospitality is truly about anticipating needs. It's about creating experiences. It's about reading the room and giving someone something before sometimes they even know that they want it. And that's what we strive to do at Barbet. And I think a lot of brands do when they're building. You are trying to anticipate your needs, you're open to feedback, and then you're creating experiences for people to enjoy themselves and drive an emotional connection with. I think that every single industry, every experience, on that personal and professional, teaches us something about ourselves, about other humans, about how communities interact with each other, and bringing that forward just makes you stronger. So I think embracing whether you feel like it's a lack of experience or you feel like it's a lot of experience, I think bringing all of that forward, that's why I love continuing, obviously, to drive new experiences, to talk to people who are in different industries. Like the hospitality industry to me is so interesting when it comes to how they approach customer care, how they approach creating experiences. Like some of the best hotels in the world love to read up on how they are iterating on what they should be doing from a customer care perspective and how they're greeting even their guests as they're arriving, knowing first names. Like all of these are personalized experiences. And I think the more that you can translate that and think components from other industries into your own, the better off that you do, because the reality is we're all complex humans. We all interact with so many things on a day-to-day basis that you have to be able to kind of satisfy all those other components of the human.
I'm going to leverage another buzzword. I think we've used this a couple of times. Community seems to be at the heart of Barbet. What advice would you share with entrepreneurs who are using community to grow their business in authentic ways? Well, that's two buzzwords in one sentence.
So many buzzwords. I mean, used right, I love a good buzzword. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all about not building at people, but it's building with them. And that was a key cornerstone to how we created Barbet from the very early one. It was about finding our community, had to find the people, and then it was about bringing them into the process. So hosting feedback sessions, hosting tastings, hosting people from obviously like all different community segments that we were looking to target and getting their true, honest feedback. Not about treating your community like an audience. It's a relationship. It's a two-way relationship. Gone are the days of these huge influencers events where they seem exclusive or they're out of reach. We've always planned or executed events where we invite our community to come into them, which has always been obviously super important to us. And that is where trust is built and that is where loyalty is built. So it's never been about mass for us. It's always been about staying true to our niches. We support the creative community through and through. So whether that's a graphic designer or photographers, whether that be us creating the events or where we put our in-kind promotion budget, we support that creative community first and foremost.
And it sounds like the brand that you've been building has been very intentional in the terms that it's really based around the values of yourself and your sister. How would you say that, being around the family and being around community, has that helped you shape Barbet's values?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I grew up in a big family. I have lots of cousins, lots of aunts and uncles, lots of siblings. And through that, we always kind of were instilled with this idea that there's always another seat at the table. And for us, that means making room, creating conversation, and really just like getting together around those shared experiences. And also kind of that idea of generosity, obviously. I think that coming from a big family with instilled in us that someone is always welcome to join the family dinner or whatever it might be, allowed Katie and I to really look at the business from a standpoint of collaboration and listening. I think that is the key markers sometimes of a large family, and those have become key pieces of the brand. In terms of the giving back, so giving back's always been in the fabric of Barbet. It was just about how we were giving back that was the question mark. So we were lucky enough to partner from the beginning and still continue to partner with 3 incredible organizations. So we work with Good to Be Good, which provides programs, entrepreneurship programs, and gender equity programs for people here in Toronto. Then we have A Greener Future, which works on the removal of plastic from lakes and oceans across Canada. And then we have Save Our Scruff, which is dog rescue and advocacy. So all 3 organizations are close to Katie and I's hearts, but then also to our community's hearts as well.
Why do you think it's so important for entrepreneurs to mentor and support each other? And what's the most common advice that you've shared and received?
Yeah, I mean, I think entrepreneurship is a heavy path to walk. And I think it's not one that you can carry by yourself. So having community around you to reach out to ask questions to is super important. I also very much believe in knowledge sharing. I believe in the collective growth of a category over anything else. And I would say one of the things with mentorship that I got caught in, and I think we all kind of get caught in, is looking for mentorship above. So looking for people who have been there, who have done it, who have the experience. And that is absolutely an incredible source of advice to get. But some of the best advice or perspective that I've gotten are from the people who are kind of shoulder to shoulder to me. So the people that are doing or at the same stage as Barbet is, because they're currently trying to solve for the problems that I am. And I think that is sometimes forgotten, that mentorship can come from your direct peers.
Our final question here is, looking back, what accomplishments are you most proud of so far in your journey with Barbet? And what are you most excited for in the future?
It's such a great question. The biggest accomplishment isn't necessarily something that we have accomplished, but it was a moment that I had with one of our customers. very early on. One of our first restaurants that we had launched with here in Toronto, they had just gotten on menu there, and I ordered some for some of the servers that were working. And one of the servers came up once she had found out that I had started Barbet, and she thanked me for creating the product. And her experience was, and one that we hear frequently, was just this idea that either cutting out or cutting back on alcohol consumption and not feeling comfortable necessarily going to events because there wasn't something that they could hold in their hand. And this genuine thanks for creating a product just validated everything that we were trying to do. And it was just such a special moment. And I think back on it fairly frequently and gives me so much motivation to continue.
I love that. And how about the future? What are we excited about for tomorrow?
I think we're excited to continue growing. I mean, it's an achievement in and of itself to be around after 4 years. We have big goals to be one of the leading national beverage brands in Canada and then obviously North America. So we will just continue on that path. We have some exciting launches and listings coming up. We've got blends like Love Bite, which is a pink grapefruit, ginger, juniper. We have our new flavor, Deep Dive, which we just launched in 2025, which is a white peach, yuzu, and mint. We've got blood orange, calamansi, jalapeno. And then our last flavor is Light Wave, which is a cucumber, pineapple, and lavender. All of these flavors you can find where you can find these on our website, drinkbarbet.com. And then we're always sharing behind the scenes tidbits across TikTok and Instagram. We always announce when we have new listings or new events or whatever it might be. So take a peek there.
Thank you again, Andrea, for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Andrea for joining me and sharing her journey with Barbet. Barbet is proof that when you build with intention, listen to your community, and stay open to learning, you can build something that genuinely makes people's lives better. Here at Interact, we're committed to supporting Canadian small business owners and honoring the time they share with us. In that spirit, today's guest was compensated for their contribution to this episode. If this episode resonated with you, please be sure to follow True Northern Hustle wherever you get your podcasts. And for more tools and resources designed to support small business owners across Canada, visit interact.ca. Thanks for listening.